So I've been making a lot of preparations for this video in particular, because this is a game that I see a lot of people hate on, dislike, whatever. But if we're talking specifically about this version in particular, which is the DS, everyone, well, at least a majority of the consensus, complains that, it uses touchscreen controls. But then those people don't realize that it uses touchscreen controls in the exact same vein as the later Mario vs. Donkey Kong games. I say later because the first one was on the GBA, and the GBA did not have a touchscreen, but I digress. So it comes across as really pessimistic and hypocritical on those people's parts, because it just amounts to, if you're perfectly fine playing the later Mario vs. Donkey Kong games, why are you complaining about this game? It uses literally the exact same control scheme, pretty much verbatim, not entirely verbatim. So, why are you complaining? For some kind of reputation or notoriety? It's actually why I'm not afraid to disagree with the general consensus. There are games that are overrated or underrated. This is one of the more underrated ones. And yes, I can remove a lot of nostalgia. I'm not going to be nostalgia blind. I don't want to be a hypocrite for the sake of a joke. But I will own up to and say that I am, in fact, what's the word? Biased, pardon me. I could not search for the word. I could not remember that word for a minute. I'm definitely biased, but I'm not nostalgia blind. It's definitely a nostalgic game for me, but I don't want to, be hypocritical and be nostalgia blind, if that makes sense. But, again, people complain about the control scheme, but a lot of people tend to complain about the plot, which, for starters, really makes no sense for a few contextual reasons. One, it's a video game, and two, it's a video game based on a cartoon, so it's going to automatically use video game logic and cartoon logic, which is, in most cases, complaining about that is a self-consuming snake in its own right. And the third reason, actually no, two more, three, four. The third reason is it's actually a variety platformer, apparently. I don't think it matters which console you're playing on, even on, the DS or the GBA. It's also a variety platform. It's a very interesting game. Although I will own up to the fact and say that, while it's not, it can be incoherent, but that's actually the intention. It's a little bit unfocused, no matter which version of the game you're playing. I will admit it's very unfocused, but, again, it's a literal playable fever dream, so in the grand scheme of things, that complaint never really clicked with me. It never made sense. Heck, even back in the day, I agree with the general consensus. That was during the time I was actually afraid to share my unpopular opinions, which is something that I'm not going to do anymore. So this is my unpopular opinion video on the Nintendo DS version of, pardon the perspective, until it's a SpongeBob game. Oh man, the camera's not off focus. Pardon me. Really sorry. I miss the old THQ branch. They rebranded as THQ Nordics. SpongeBob, Creature from Krusty Krab. This is the Nintendo DS version. And as I said before, people, set me on fire, obviously metaphorically, and say again that I'm being nostalgia blind. I'm definitely biased, but not nostalgia blind. I'm defending this version of the game, and I am not holding back. I think this is a version of the game that has a cult following in its own right. It doesn't have a speedrun community. It's not a Battle for Bikini Bottom, but it's definitely got a small cult following. I will be honest with that. It's not very well liked by most people, like I said, but I'm going to be one of those few people who will defend this version of the game, because it gets way too much flack. Love the anime cutscenes, by the way. My main complaint that I will always stand by, and I think most people will agree with me on this, so that's kind of something I will agree with the general consensus. The audio quality of the cutscenes is kind of underwhelming and unimpressive, despite how well animated the cutscenes are, which maybe that's the logical reason, because we are talking about the DS after all. Skip that. Yeah, see, it's the exact same control scheme as the later Mario vs. Donkey Kong games. And not to mention, that's not the only example. This is not the only example of another game that uses that control scheme. Or at least a similar one. I actually covered Battle of Giants Mutant Insects recently, which uses a similar control scheme. Not the exact same control scheme verbatim, but a similar one. Yes, game, I know. But yes, you control your character with the touchscreen, the stylus. And in case you're wondering, because I forgot to point this out, I've been so busy actually playing the game, those coin-like things, I always want to know what they are, but they're called sleepy seeds. I have a lot of them. That's what that... Oh, camera. That's what that is in the corner. You have a life meter, not like in the GBA version, though, which 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hits, then you die. You have 3 hits. That's your life count. And that's... You're supposed to collect 5 of whatever object, and then there's time. I don't know what happens when you run out of time, you know, aside from the fact that you die. I don't know if there's like a... You're running out of time warning. I'm not entirely sure. Pardon me. This perspective is really strange. The game actually never tells you this about the objects that you can push. I'm really surprised. Hold on. But if you keep tapping it, and you destroy it, it'll spawn back in its original place. So let me show that off real quick. Specifically, it'll respawn where it once was. Yeah, there we go. So that's a great way of resetting the puzzle that you're stuck in. Oh, I love the animation in this game. It is really good. Those blocks, the big ones take more pokes to get rid of. No. And the smaller ones take 1 poke. And they cause a chain reaction. Like, they will just... It's a no game. It'll cause a literal chain reaction. Also, you can do this. You can take out all the bundles of seaweed all at once. Then there are these objects that spawn health or health pickups or lives. Pardon me. That's an object. That's like... Pardon me. Let me speak coherently. If you see an object that's sparkly, that's not a health item or a life, that's the object that you need to progress through the level. Thank you. I can speak coherently. Camera, please. That's a winch, valve, whatever. That'll unlock the passageway. Then there are the ones that you can activate by stepping on a button or a pad or something like that. I don't know what that's actually supposed to be. Then there are these platforms that will spawn once you pull down on the lever. And when time runs out, they disappear, so you gotta be careful that you're not above a pit. There are also game, please. Springs, which launch your character. I absolutely love this. I also love how you can, you know, fix the direction that your character is facing. That's a really nice touch. Woohoo! Oh man, I love that so much, dude. I think I'm almost done with this part of the level. It's the tutorial level, so I think we're almost... Yeah, we're almost good. I think we're just gonna learn about enemies now. Jellyfish do not actually kill you directly. They will wrap themselves around you and then, you know... How's it go? Ah! Yeah, enemies like that will directly hurt you. But when the jellyfish wrap around you and you don't scrub them off, they will enter the dream world, which is actually... That's the, top screen. I forgot to show it in time, and it'll get closer and closer to you, and then it'll actually kill you. But you can actually scare it away by blowing into the microphone, which isn't actually responsive majority of the time. I forgot to point that flaw of this version of the game out. So I guess I thought I'd point out. I guess now is the time where I go over my overall opinions of the game, you know, in general. Yes. Again, a very overhated and unwarrantedly hated game. At least the DS version. It's the only, no, it's not the only. The other one would be the GBA version. I actually always wanted to play the console version, but I never got around to playing it because, like I said, I was never a console gamer. Yes, aside from, no. I was a console gamer with the Genesis and the PlayStation, but other than that, I kind of fell out of the loop. But even then, it's not something that I, you know, like, hate or dislike or whatever. It's just something that never really, you know, clicked with me. Like, I absolutely love taking things literally on the go. I'm not like being like some hypocrite, like nostalgia blind YouTube prick who's telling you, I'm right and you're wrong. No, quite the opposite. Again, this is a defense video for this version of the game. I might actually get to the GBA version at some point because that uses one screen, and that'll probably be universe is easier to record. I'm not going to do a capture card. I could never actually afford a capture card. And I'm definitely not going to emulate. I don't support emulation because unless it's an absolute last resort, like say a prototype or something like that, I don't support that. But what was I going to talk about next? I get so sidetracked. Like, to those who are going to say, oh, you're making no sense, it's literally because I get so caught up in one thing that I forget what I was going to say about the other thing. Graphics are pretty good, especially because they were the game was apparently published or developed by WayForward. The same thing also applies with the GBA version as well, which is, it's a GBA game. It looks good, but it's not, I don't think the DS version does either, but I don't know if either of the versions run at 60 FPS. It's a GBA and DS game that we're talking about here. The soundtrack is pretty good. I absolutely love the soundtrack. Some tracks sound better on the GBA than they do on the DS and vice versa, at least in my opinion. For example, the Diesel Dreaming level theme, it sounds better, in my opinion, on the DS. I think it might actually be in stereo. What's another track I like? I love the credits theme, which is only present in the GBA version. Yeah, that's a baffler. There is a credit sequence, not an actual, well, there's the cutscene before, the actual credits, but the credits screen, it's just, what is the island above Bikini Bottom? You see it in the opening of the show itself, but there's no remnants of the credits theme that is present in the GBA version. There's nothing to suggest that existed during the development of the DS version at all. Like, no audio files, no text files. And I've listened to it, actually, had listened to it before. It's at first, it's very, very catchy, and then, switches to being ominous. Like, it's got that, what's that instrument? I think it's like a theremin? It's actually very, very fitting because the game itself is a playable fever dream and a B-movie. Like, it's going for the exact same tone as the game's tone, if that makes sense. That is just a nice touch. Like, the game being a B-movie, fever dream, whatever shtick, is actually pulled off a lot better in terms of a portable version of the game in the GBA version. Because, when you go to the continue screen, or if you view the credits like I do occasionally, just to hear that really rockin' theme, you actually see a group of fish watching a movie. And guess what? They're watching you! They're watching... Well, not you, play the game, you know what I mean. It's actually a really, really awesome idea to make it look, as faithful to the parody as possible. It is really, really good. Not only that part me had to swallow, but like in the GBA version, you're apparently in the movie theater. That's a really, really nice touch. I really do admire that. So again, I'm not going to go out of my way and say, it's the best thing ever, because, I don't want to be like nostalgia blind, hypocritical, and tell you, I'm right, you're wrong, but I will say that it's really overhated. Like, it's really overhated. I do recommend it, especially if you're a die-hard SpongeBob fan, which, yes, I am, which is why I point out that I'm not nostalgia blind, but I will still be biased on that. I will not bend on that. But it deserves a lot more love than it doesn't, it deserves more love than it does, unfortunately, not get, even in the modern day and age. And after the game's 15th anniversary, last year, I felt like a video like this was kind of, it was about high time I did that. So, yeah. Thank you so much for watching. This is Sir Bop-A-Lot, signing out.